Good morning, everyone. Wow, can you believe it? This is day three of our summit. What started off as a dream, and then we had to pivot into something else. We're now online, and today we're bringing you three presentations. And to start us off, we are going to be meeting with our chairperson, Lydia from and she is going to be sharing with us beyond sustainability. Okay, so let's invite our dear Lydia to the stage. Good morning, Lydia. How are you?
Good morning, Suzanne. It's so great to greet you today, as well as our audience. We're excited to find ourselves in day three, full of expectations because there is more to come.
Oh, yes. I mean, this is the exciting part of it where we get our speakers coming in with each different presentation. We had a little sneak peek before, but without further ado, I'm going to allow you to share with us, um, share with us your experience. You have a huge resume of experience. Introduce us a little bit with that and then take away with your presentation.
Of course. Thank you, Susanna, for the floor. Well, being brief, I'm an education expert, but my my professional pathway took me to work in development, human development, social development, economic development. First, in different agencies for development cooperation. I work with the Canadian Development Cooperation Agency as well as with the German agency, GIZ. I also work for the German Development Bank, KfW, as well as with the World Bank, and also did a couple of projects with the now gone USAID. And I also, um, during some time, I was Director General for Development Cooperation of Honduras, and I was in charge of negotiations at the global level that were held in the Organization for Economic and Cooperation Development in Paris, OECD. I had to represent the region in these negotiations. And I was also Vice Minister for Social Development of my country, where we worked a lot on social policies, inclusive policies, which is a level of that is necessary for programs to come in and be implemented at the grassroots level. And I was also executive director for a regional organization that includes Central America, but also brings on board, brings Mexico and Colombia to the negotiating table. So it's been quite a trip, and I've learned a lot on policy making, on financing programs and projects, implementation, as well as negotiations with civil society, with academy, government, and all the development actors that are now at the global level seated around the table figuring out how to make the world a better place to live in.
Okay.
So now I think we can concentrate a little on regenerative tourism and just review a couple of things that we already know.
Okay.
So
So definitely that's a life experience. And it's very interesting. Steve Jobs once said that we don't know it when we're going through the process, but like when we stand today and we look back at where we have been and how each of those dots connect to where we are right now. In terms of when he lost Apple and he came into Pixel and sometimes when you're walking the walk of innovation and trying to do something different, we don't always understand the path we take. So without further ado, dear Lydia, today you're going to be talking to us about regenerative tourism and going beyond sustainability. Because we know right now the world, the UN is talking about the Sustainable Development Goals, but how can regenerative tourism take us beyond that? So I'm going to leave you and be here with our audience.
Thank you, Suzanne. Yes, we'll walk and we'll review things that we already know. But it's always a good idea to sit back and reflect and think a little about where we are going. And as Suzanne said, it is important to look back and see how we can connect the dots. But it is also important to look forward. So going beyond sustainability, what can we make out of that? So we'll start. Um, Please, next one. Next slide, please. Yes, thank you. All right. So if we define regenerative tourism, we find ourselves in a concept that is founded on restoration, on regenerating, on strengthening the culture, the local culture, and of course, revitalizing economy. But it is more than a concept. It is a true practice. And I think people are mostly talking about sustainable tourism, but it is important to do handle concepts because sustainability and sustainable tourism refers to one thing that we will go in deep in a while. And regenerative tourism is talking about something else. So, on the one hand, we should use terms correctly. And I know we all know this, but it's important for us to be able to illustrate the differences. And it is important for us to be able to distinguish the differences with the people we make business with the people we encounter, with the people we talk to, with what we write, because we need to push this concept and also the practices that are linked to it. We need to put it on the table. We need to set it up and we need to be persistent so that first by making people be aware conceptually, we can then introduce people to becoming practitioners of a new way of handling and managing tourism. So, if we compare and contrast, regenerative tourism includes or is founded on improving the systems, not only reducing harm. And I think this is the deal. This is the difference that we have to promote with all sorts of audiences we may meet in our everyday lives. See, sustainability mostly means do no harm, but regenerative means let's improve, let's make a greater impact. And this is what the Sustainable Development Goals are talking about. This is what the 2030 agenda is talking about. This is what our countries have signed off at the United Nations General Assembly. Because the Sustainable Development Goal on tourism refers to aligning global tourism with all 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Because the expectation is to build a better world, a prosperous world by 2030. So, from the viewpoint of tourism, we can support all 17 sustainable development goals: reducing poverty, being more inclusive, promoting economic development that is inclusive too. But particularly, if we talk about the sustainable development goals, we can refer to goal number 8, which covers decent work and economic growth. We could also mention the goal number 12, which talks about responsible consumption and production. And even another goal, goal number 14, which refers to life below water. So there is a global institution, United Nations Tourism, and there is a platform, Tourism for the Sustainable Development Goals platform, and they work at the global level to integrate these sustainable development goals into tourism policies, foster cooperation, collaboration, and provide tools to measure progress. So, this is an opportunity we have to see what type of work is done at the global level. So, in detail, if we define regenerative tourism, we're talking about restoring. We're talking about regenerating ecosystems. We're talking about a revival in terms of culture at the local level. And we're talking, of course, about shared prosperity. And this definition aligns perfectly well with the Sustainable Development Goals and the 2030 Agenda that all our countries have endorsed at the United Nations Global Assembly. We will continue. So, just reviewing quick principles and frameworks that enable sustainable regenerative tourism. First of all, place-based solutions, especially local leadership. So communities assume a different role, an active role. We're talking about the use, the circular resource use, and of course, as I've mentioned before, restoring these ecosystems. We're talking about benefits that come from, that are birthed in inclusive economies, inclusive economic strategies, and capacity building. So it's not just not doing harm, it's focusing on how can we contribute to strengthening capacities? How can we collaborate to ensure capacity building at the community level? We're talking also about a different type of measuring progress, measuring beyond the GDP. We're talking about considering well being aligned and articulated or linked to biodiversity and to cultural continuity. So it's a richer concept, it's a broader um, aligning of different elements, but that they are all contributing to one goal, and it's human being, the development of human beings. We continue. So, key differences: sustainable tourism operates on the principle of do no harm, reduce harm, and it reacts to the negative effects of mass tourism that we all know are depleting resources and are degrading environments. But regenerative tourism acknowledges that destinations are already degraded, and that by simply not doing any more harm, It's not enough. So regenerative tourism is aiming for a holistic viewpoint, a holistic approach, a holistic improvement of these systems, the ecological system as it is linked to the social system in the destination. We continue. If we compare piece by piece, let's do it. Sustainable tourism has a goal. You minimize negative impacts, social, economic, and environmental impacts. But in regenerative tourism, the goal is to restore, to improve this destination, to create a positive impact at the biological, at the ecological level, but also at the human level. The sustainable tourism has a footprint. It focuses on leaving no trace or a minimal impact. But regenerative tourism, the footprint that it leaves focuses on making the place a better site, making it better, improving it as uh, making it better than it was before coming in. The mindset of sustainable tourism is maintenance and preserve the status quo. But regenerative tourism has a different mindset, and the mindset is heal, heal. See, take care in a way that it will restore and that it will become a better place. So it's restoration of the entire living system. Sustainable tourism has a role for visitors, for tourists. And the role is be a responsible consumer. You make consumers conscious of choices to avoid more damage. But in regenerative tourism, the visitor's role is an active participation. The role is different. It's an active role. It's not just coming in and not doing any harm. It's in this role, tourist becomes a co-creator of the destination's well-being. It's definitely a different role, a richer role, a role that leaves an impact. In sustainable tourism, people and agencies are ensuring fair economic benefits. But in regenerative tourism, the purpose is to empower that community to become a main actor, a main agent of decision making. In sustainable tourism, actions that are carried out focus on reducing water or energy consumption, managing wastes, protecting current resources. But in regenerative tourism, actions that are being carried out at the community level focus on reforestation projects, ecosystem restoration, revitalizing the cultural aspects of that community, and community building, bringing in actors and enabling them to engage in dialogue and to discuss and agree, specifically agree on how to make their community a better place for them, for their children, and for everyone. We continue. So, brief experiences. A Honduran experience that we can talk about is Roatan. And there's this initiative for coral restoration and community tourism. So, here we're talking about a coral larval lab. And this project that supports diving tourism and livelihoods, but at the same time, restoring the coral reef, which has unfortunately suffered great damage previously. So, partnerships. In regenerative tourism, we're talking about partnerships because the great thing of this is that it's a practical way of implementing alliances. And do you know the Sustainable Development Goal 17 demands a global partnership for development. So these sustainable development goals understand that development will only be brought in through partnerships, through alliances. And here we have a great experience of partnerships. We have the Roatan Marine Park, a couple of NGOs, and academic labs. And they are working together under an alliance, under a partnership to um, to ensure reef recovery and resilient livelihoods. So, important outcomes: community stewardships, partnerships, volunteer tourism, and the improved reef health monitoring strategy. So there's a continuous learning, and this is a wonderful thing of regenerative tourism. Learning is continuous because through partnerships, people are learning, people are sharing, and they're contributing to capacity development. So I think this is a wonderful experience. Next, El Salvador. The El Salvador experience with regenerative hospitality and community revivals is centered on new lodging options, new lodging options that connect guests to artisans so that tourists or guests can engage and can share with these artisans, um, enjoy local materials at the same time that they are enjoying these beautiful landscapes, these beautiful sunsets that you have in El Salvador. So, properties and community led trails are reshaping all these tourists' flows towards smaller towns. And this is what people seek. They seek to enjoy the landscape, enjoy the small towns, but also to enjoy what people are creating in that small town. Outcomes: you have a rebirth of local craft markets, you have an important initiative for job creation, cultural exchange, of course, and nature restoration projects. So, this is a wonderful example of regenerative tourism um, being implemented. We continue. Costa Rica experience. Costa Rica has an initiative for payments for ecosystem services, and it aligns conservation with local livelihoods. So we're talking about ecotourism and rewilding projects. For example, at the Osa Peninsula, and this has demonstrated that landscape restoration can be tied to tourism in a successful way. So, this is a win win situation for everyone. The outcome: you obtain restored forests, diversified rural incomes for families, for people, and stronger tourism values for communities. So, again, in these three experiences, what we find is um, a storyline, and it's learning, sharing. The storyline is based on partnerships, different actors coming together, each under their mm, own knowledge, contributing to a shared goal. So, this is a live partnership. We continue. Experiences in Africa. We also find very rich initiatives in Africa, rich experiences such as community conservancies and community based tourism. For example, Namibia. Let's take Namibia. Namibia's community based natural resource management program is empowering local communities to manage their natural resources, and it's granting community rights to manage wildlife and benefit from tourism. So perhaps in another under another model, these the management of wildlife would be more centralized, but under this experience, communities are managing wildlife. So community run lodges and conservancies are generating revenue and are incentivizing conservation as aligned with tourism. So you have important outcomes: rising wildlife populations, local governance capacities that are being developed and strengthened, and diversified incomes for different families, for different people. So, again, win win situations. Let's continue with this tour. We're taking a brief tour. Asia. Let's go to Asia now. Bali and Indonesia. The shift is moving massive from mass tourism to regenerative tourism, and this is wonderful. In Bali, community initiatives like mangrove and reef restoration, village-based tourism that is known as desa wisata in Bali. So government and private sector projects are supporting regeneration of these beautiful landscapes and crafts. Again, we find the artisans are part of this formula, and the outcomes are very important because we're talking about reducing over tourism pressure in hotspot zones. And at the same time, there is a rebirth of community income from authentic experiences in these communities. So, win win. There's regeneration, there's restoration, there's income, crafts are there, the artisans, and different actors working at the community level to produce these outcomes. A shared goal with different actors that have different capacities, but they are not competing. They are not uh, fighting over resources. They're working together under rich partnerships. So, regenerative tourism is based on partnerships, alliances, one shared goal or different shared goals, but everyone in each of their capacities working together under partnership. Continue. Entrepreneurs. And these people are illustrating good practices. For example, small lodges in all of these places, social enterprises are reinvesting profits into restoring that ecosystem and also training other people. So the basis of this is learning. I say it again. Examples: community dive operators in Roatan, regenerative guest houses in El Salvador, Costa Rica eco lodges. The common feature: local hiring, revenue sharing that is transparent, and measurable results with the projects, with the community projects that are being implemented there, grassroots. So, again, win win situations, win win initiatives founded on regenerative tourism. Yes, it's possible. Yes, it's being carried out. We need to expand it, we need to promote it. Again, let's move on. So, from the government side, enabling policies at work. This is an added value that government can bring into these experiences. But I have to say something. These experiences are already happening, whether the government has the right policies or the enabling policies. But I would like to mention this. For example, in Costa Rica, there has been, the government has ensured incentives for conservation and tourism. And I think this is a great lesson that governments in other places ought to learn. Governments should be responsible for enabling policies and bringing in incentives. And this would be a wonderful support for regenerative tourism. For example, in Namibia, the Community Land and Resource Rights, who granted this? Central government. So, yes, government has a role in regenerative tourism. Yes, it has a role. But the good thing is that you don't necessarily need the government for things to happen at the community level. It's great to have it. But if you don't have it there, still, if you have a live, if you have a partnership at the community level, you're fine. So, for example, planning, local planning instruments, and tourism zoning to avoid over tourism and spread benefits. This is another important role that governments can play. Yes, they have a role. Yes, all these three um, government instruments are important, these that we are watching in the slide. But even if it's not there, it doesn't affect the capacity of different actors to build a strong partnership and make things happen. Let's go on. Impacts on communities. For example, economic impacts. Economies are diversified, new jobs are created, and there is an important growth of micro enterprise. Social impacts that are so necessary and so important. Strengthen governance because you have different actors working and running a partnership. You have a cultural revitalization, improved services of education services, health services. See, because all these actors are bringing a new dynamic to uh, the community. Environmental impacts, habitats that are restored, improved ecosystem services, water services, fisheries, carbon services. So it's, again, we're talking about a win-win condition and initiatives that different actors, they don't need to compete. It's just identifying what are these common challenges that we can face through a shared goal and identifying roles, functions, responsibilities, and working together towards that. Continue. We also need to measure success. And yes, we can have key indicators to measure success. Yes, you can't really understand how much impact has been carried out if you don't measure. But the good thing is that yes, we can define key indicators. For example, measuring ecological success, species counts, forest coverage, reef, live coral percentage, the quality of water. If we want to measure social and economic success, we can think of indicators like the percent of local employment, how much it has improved, the income share that has been retained locally, and women's leadership. Yes, all of this can be measured. And even qualitative success, you can measure through qualitative instruments, community satisfaction, the revival of cultural practices, guest experiences aligned with regeneration. So, yes, we can all measure, and we need to measure so we can fully understand where and how improvement has been achieved. Let's go on. Everything in life has a challenge, but regenerators are not afraid of challenges. We are all regenerators and we like challenges and we take risks. For instance, funding continuity. This is a big challenge. This is why, from day one, there has to be a medium and long term perspective so we can project how we will ensure funding continuity. Greenwashing versus genuine regenerative outcomes. We need to understand the differences and make sure what are we going to tackle. Equity risks, for instance, the capture of benefits by the elites. And we also have to consider insufficient local capacity. That's why any regenerative tourism initiative has a capacity building component, because insufficient local capacity is an enormous risk. Continue. A practical roadmap for all. 6 recommended steps to kickstart regenerative tourism. Number 1, secure local leadership and rights, because we need this local leadership for the initiative to continue growing. Map asset needs, map restoration needs. We need to make an inventory of what are all these restoration needs, so that when we define the actions, we know which of these needs are we going to tackle and how. If we tackle one need, we can also contribute to providing for another need. And the common or the continuous storyline, capacity development. We need to design revenue sharing and local enterprise support. So have a clear financial picture, a clear financial projection. We need to create measurable restoration projects. So the indicator part, we need to define indicators so that we measure impact. And we can tie these measurable projects to visitor activities. We need to establish monitoring and transparent reporting. So we need instruments, we need tools, we need to do things and do them well. So we need tools that can create an important monitoring and reporting system. And this becomes also important for us to share with other initiatives in other parts of the world. Imagine a network, a network of regenerators, sharing the tools that are being used, sharing the inventories, sharing the strategies, talking about outcomes. So we're talking about a global learning network, a community of practice. And this is what Baloo Travel has dreamed for these summits, creating a global community of practice, people sharing these tools, indicators, experiences, outcomes, strategies, mechanisms, governments sharing the policy frameworks, the incentives that have been designed, defined, and implemented to support regenerative tourism. We're talking about learning, we're talking about a big partnership. So, scale via policy incentives and public private partnerships. Even the private sector can become part of this formula and part of this learning scheme if we are able to set up these communication um, strategies so that we can all learn together. Continue. Funding and finance options. I know this is a big challenge, but it's tackable. Consider tourist fees, bed taxes, impact tourism investment, blended finance, which is very now it's very common for people to talk about blended finance, NGO partnerships, revenue sharing models with community equity stakes in lodges and tours. I mean, of course, we can take all of these topics and we can expand experiences and talk a little more about this, but we can do it as an activity of the community of practice. Um, but I'm sure we can find important lessons all over the place. We continue. Lessons learned from global experiences. Policy complemented by community rights, which is also complemented by entrepreneur action. And we're talking then about durable regeneration. We need to start small, a seed, a tiny seed that we take care of. And then if we start small with clear metrics, we can scale up, we can upscale when ecological and social wins start to take place and start coming in. Start small is always a good advice. Prioritize equity, women's leadership, and cultural safeguards. So, yes, there are important lessons that we can draw from and upscale with our experiences. Continue. A call to action. We're finalizing. A call to action. Invest in local leadership and rights. Pilot regenerative projects tied to measurable restoration. The message on the table is we can measure regenerative initiatives. Advocate for policy instruments. So if we move a step beyond, we can engage in dialogue with governments. And through dialogue, help the government understand we need policy frameworks, we need incentives, we need laws, we need zoning to avoid over tourism. So I think the richer part of this is that when we're all organized at the community level, we can take steps to engage in dialogue with different government actors, local governments, central governments, with lawmakers, and we can bring all these people to our initiative and they can learn, and this can be upscaled at the national level. We need to share data. We need to scale successful business models across different regions. So, how do we share? We share through community, a community of practice. So, these are all the supporting reasons, the good reasons, the important reasons that explain why we need to take this next step and create the community of practice. Go on. A final thought that I want to leave on this table. Regenerative tourism is not just about leaving no trace, it's mainly about leaving a legacy for generations to come. Together, we can ensure that every trip, that every journey is healing the earth, that it is uplifting these communities, these families, these people, where travel and tourism can give back more than what it takes home. So, a final thought to close, a reflection. Thank you for your time and thank you for your commitment. Regenerative tourism is the option forward. Thank you.
I was just saying, wow, a very content rich presentation with examples, um, very practical advice for, or at least a map or direction for anyone looking to get involved and understanding how to move beyond sustainability. We're hearing these words, we're recognizing that many people are, um, you can always fall into the fashion. It can become fashionable to speak about regenerative or just slap it on a poster but today, Lydia, you shared with us like real steps to take to be an actual participant, an actual collaborator in the movement of moving sustainable, from inviting local government to sit at the table with us to partnerships that we can develop with each other or like-minded professionals. And I love that you also talked about frameworks. We have to have our legal framework set in place in order to be able to protect all interests. And I think I truly did love when you spoke of shared prosperity. I think that's one of the most beautiful outcomes of regenerative economies and regenerative tourism, shared prosperity for everyone. So thank you very much. Is there anything you'd like to say to our audience before we close?
Just invite regenerators to continue moving forward, but under partnerships. Because there was this famous basketball player, Michael Jordan. He said, I can be a winner, but we can win championships if I am part of a team.
Wow,
So he recognized
beautiful.
that it was not just his success as a player, but that success could be greater as a team. So I believe in partnerships.
Definitely. It takes a lot of growth, my personal development to be able to work as a team. I think it reflects a lot of personal and actually yesterday in one of our presentations, one of our presenters talked about building regenerating but from the inside out. So to get to partnerships, I think it's really important what it is you're saying. And I think I want to invite everyone looking at us on YouTube or LinkedIn or wherever you're joining us, if you have also registered for our members area on our website, regeneratravel.com. You can register and have access to Lydia's presentation so you can digest it on your own. You can have your cup of coffee, you can have your cevita, or you can have your tea and crumpets, whatever you choose to do. But you can sit down, listen, maybe even sit with friends, contemplate investment, contemplate how can you do this together. You can sit together and have access. This information will be available at regeneratravel.com, and it is part of our foundations, opportunities, and impact module. And we do invite you because if you register now, you can have access to this information for free right now. But we have more modules coming up and we're going to have more content. So we do invite you to visit our site, join up, get ready, and stay tuned because we have more on our day 3 of our Regenera Travel Summit 2025. Lydia, thank you very much for sharing your knowledge, sharing your time. Thank you very much for your collaboration with us. Thank you.
Thanks to you, I've enjoyed the journey. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone. Stay tuned for our next presentation.